Welcome to the Magic Channel.
Today we are diving into a really beautiful and powerful poem by Weerathunga W Nimal called The Ballad of the Snails. And it uses, of all things, a colony of snails to explore some of our biggest ideas: injustice, revolution, and that slow, sometimes painful path towards hope. So let's get right into it.
Yeah, I know. Sounds a little strange, right? What can snails possibly teach us about justice? But stick with me, because that question is the absolute heart of this poem. We're going to unpack this whole allegory and see how the struggles of these tiny creatures actually reflect some of the biggest challenges in our own world.
All right, so let's set the scene. The poem doesn't really ease you in. It just drops you straight into this world of deep inequality. And right away, it establishes the two groups at the very center of this conflict.
And I mean, just look at the contrast here. On one side, you've got the snails. The poem describes them as carrying these cracked and heavy shells, breathing nothing but smoke-stained air. They're dealing with a hollow hunger. And then on the other side, you've got the sun kings, the rulers. They're feasting on everything the snails produce, building thrones of stolen dew and wearing crowns of stolen rain. You know, it's that classic picture of the haves and the have-nots, and it's built entirely on exploitation.
This line, wow, it's just devastating, and it perfectly captures the cruelty of this system. This isn't just about neglect, it's about active, casual violence. That image of dancing on cracking shells is so visceral. It shows a complete and total disregard for the suffering of the very creatures holding their society up. The whole system is literally built on their pain.
But you know, that kind of oppression can only go on for so long. Eventually, something has to break. And that's exactly what happens next. We get to the part of the story about a revolution, one that's born from pure desperation.
So before they revolt, the snails actually try to work within the system. They cry out for mercy from what the poem calls the wind courts. And isn't that just the perfect metaphor for a broken justice system? Judgments just drifted lazily in the air, and justice itself crawled on trembling legs forever hours late. The system was never, ever designed to help them. It was built to protect the powerful.
Okay, so the official channels, they're a total failure. The snails are left with no other choice. Their pleas get ignored, justice is a no-show. So, what do? They rise up. The poem tells us the giants finally fell, and out of those ashes, the snails start to build something completely new, a softer kingdom.
And at first, this new world is it's so full of hope. I mean, think about this. The community's first instinct isn't revenge, it's healing. They focus on mending the damage, on creating a society that's based on care and supporting each other. It's this beautiful, really optimistic vision of what a society could be.
Yeah, but the story, it doesn't end on that happy note. The poem takes this really sharp, almost cynical turn, kind of suggesting that getting rid of the rulers is only half the battle.
I mean, just listen to the imagery here. Serpents through the grass, honeyed tongues of glass. The old rulers, they don't just vanish. No, they adapt. They change how they look. They pretend to be allies, whispering these sweet-sounding lies to get their influence back. They basically infiltrate the new system from the inside out.
And this is the real gut punch of the poem. Because what it's saying is that even after a full-blown revolution, the deep-down structures of power can stick around. Sure, the snails got rid of the Sun Kings, but the system that let them exist in the first place, that turned out to be much, much harder to get rid of.
So this really gets us to the core theme of the whole poem. Like, why is it so incredibly, painfully slow to change a system? And to explain this, the poem uses the snail itself as the main metaphor.
And here's the line that just lays it all out. Justice moves like a snail. And it's not just about being slow, right? The poem tells us it's also about being vulnerable, too soft. It's about a lack of vision or direction, too blind. It is such a powerful and honestly frustrating image.
And the poem gets really specific about why the system keeps failing. It says the guard and judge and healer were all shaped from the same kind, which means the institutions are still run by people who benefit from the old ways. The wicked, they find their loopholes, slipping away through leafy doors. And in the end, power just protects itself in places that justice dares not climb. See, it's a systemic problem, not just a few bad apples.
Okay, so after all of that cynicism, you'd be forgiven for thinking this poem ends on a real downer. But it doesn't. It offers one last, really fragile but incredibly powerful glimmer of hope. Which brings us to the one question that's been hanging over this entire story. After all this struggle, all this betrayal, when do things finally get better? When is the sun actually going to rise for the snails? And here it is, the poem's beautiful final answer. It compares truth to the moon. It's not some big blazing sun, right? It's pale and frail. It can get covered by clouds, but the key is it's persistent. It will rise, and it will find its path, even if that path is as slow and as difficult as the crawl of a snail.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? It's really about this delicate balance. On one hand, the poem is brutally honest. Changing broken systems is an incredibly difficult, slow, and frustrating process. But on the other hand, it insists that truth has this kind of persistent gravitational pull. It may crawl, but it never, ever stops moving forward.
And that really leaves us with one final thought to chew on. The poem says truth finds a way, but it doesn't say it has to do it all alone. So if justice and truth really do crawl like snails, the question for us becomes, what can we do to help clear their path, to protect them on that journey and maybe help them get to their destination just a little bit faster? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for watching.